everyone. Thank you for joining us today for part 3 of our Business Reboot webinar with business advisor Lori Allen. If you have joined part 1 and part 2, welcome back. Today we'll be going over operations and management and wrapping up the general overview of what we should be taking a look at. If you are joining us for the first time, definitely check out the recordings of part 1 and part 2. It might answer some questions you have all along the way. It looks like we've got Phyllis here already introducing ourselves. Welcome, Phyllis. Everyone else, take this opportunity to introduce yourself in the chat. Let us know where you're calling in from, what your industry is. If you have a link to your business you'd like to share with us, please do so. And you can also submit any questions you have in the chat as well. Otherwise, I think we are all set to go, and I will pass it over to Lori.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much again for joining us. And I'm going to go ahead and shut off my video just to start with, because it helps with not having things hinge on our internet here at work. So let me just do that really quickly. And so, yeah, thanks again for spending another lunch hour with us. As Kelsey said, you know, we've done a lot of work over the past couple of weeks. We've talked about our marketing, we've done our market analysis, we've done our marketing strategy. Last week, we looked at pricing and we looked at our financials. And as we go along, if you have any, want to let us know what you've done over the past couple of weeks to move your business forward, or kind of taking a look at things, let us know. And also, it's great if you can introduce yourself, let us know who you are and what your business is. And as we go along, I have built in places for comments, but if you have questions along the way, don't be afraid to just throw them out there. Kelsey monitors the chat so we can bring them up as we go along. So today we're going to talk about operations and management and a few other little bits and bobs that I added at the end because I thought they were important. And as always, here's my caveat, my little sort of, I don't know if warning is the right word, but so much of your operations and management in your business plan, whether you're writing a new one or you're revamping an existing one, so much of this depends on the type of business you have, the size of your business, and the scope of your business. So for some of you, if you have a small consulting practice that you run out of a spare room in your home, your operations and management sections of your plan are going to be pretty small. You might just have a paragraph, and that's okay. As we look at other different types of businesses though, and as you add employees, or if you have a retail store or a restaurant or even a small manufacturing facility, your needs are going to grow. And so these sections of your business plan can get pretty big. And so we're gonna kind of walk through this. So some of this stuff you may find as we go along doesn't apply to you. That's okay. Other cases, it will apply to you. You're just going to have a smaller amount of stuff to write and smaller amount of stuff to look at than a larger business or a business that has a lot of regulations or a lot of stuff that they need to get their arms around. Another thing that impacts these sections of your plan is whether you are selling products or whether you're a service-related business. Because obviously, if you're selling products, then you have to worry about inventory management. Whereas if you're a service business, you have different concerns and different things to worry about. So all of these things are going to impact these sections of your business plan. We're going to start by talking about just some of the basic components of your operations section. Some of this stuff is just really basic, like where are you located? And what is your service area? Now, you may be located in Portland, Maine, and your service area is, the greater Portland area. Maybe you are up in Augusta and you are serving all of central and southern Maine. Maybe your region's New England. You sell things all over New England. Maybe you have a national, maybe you sell nationally, maybe you have an international market. But you're going to talk about that. You're also going to talk about the days and hours of operation. You know, maybe you're open, you have a service business, you're open 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. Maybe you have a restaurant and you're open 7 days a week. Do you lease your space or do you own your going to include any sort of relevant information that pertains to your location. So for example, if you're opening a retail store and you're going to be in a downtown district where there's a lot of foot traffic, and you know, foot traffic's really important to retail, that's important to know. If you have a restaurant and you're going to be located near other restaurants, that's also a good thing to know, because that's the sort of thing where sometimes having a competitor nearby, you become a restaurant district kind of thing. So being close to your competition is not always a bad thing, just depends on the type of business you have. But you want to talk about that. For some of you, where you're at doesn't matter because people are going to find you anywhere, right? So if you're an accountant and you're launching your own accounting firm, foot traffic isn't going to make a whole lot of difference to you. But you are going to need to know where you're going to be and what your office setup is going to look like. For those of you who have a retail space or you have an office space or a production or manufacturing facility, you're going to want to talk about what your space is going to look like. What is that? What's the layout? You may include pictures in your plan. You may have blueprints that you want to include in your plan, particularly if you're looking for financing. You want to think about how your production line is going to be laid out. Talk about that. Talk about what this actually looks like. You're also going to talk about any systems that you have in place. And this can be things like QuickBooks. Maybe you're going to use Salesforce or some other customer relations management software. Maybe you're going to use Constant Contact for your marketing. Maybe you have some industry specific software that you use. Restaurants have certain point of sale systems that a lot of folks use. Hairdressers, salons sometimes have their own proprietary software. You're going to want to talk about that because it's part of managing your business. Couple other things that we're going to dive into a little bit more in depth because they really do relate to whatever kind of business products and services you're selling. These relate is your sales cycle. And we're going to talk about sales cycle in more depth, and then inventory management. But really this operation section is all of the things all of the logistical stuff you need to keep your business running. And so why is this important? Well, certainly for financing, we know that the bank is going to want to know as much as they can about your business. They're going to want to know that you've thought all this stuff through. And, if you're trying to finance buying a building, for example, they're going to want to know what the space is like and how you're going to use it. And they're going to want to know that you're setting yourself up for success. Even if you're not looking for financing, though, this is important to do because it's going to help you plot your path forward. And again, whether you're a new business starting or an existing business, and maybe you're trying to grow, this is really important to plot your path forward. I'm going to talk a little bit about sales cycle here. And this is really geared towards folks who are selling products, but certainly this applies as well if you're a service-based industry. First of all, you kind of want to map out how can a customer buy your products? How are your customers finding you? Now, if you have a retail store, maybe they're just, kind of walking in. Maybe you're selling via a website. Maybe you have, it's just people are calling you up and saying, hey, can you give me a quote? I need this work done. Or maybe they're emailing you, or on your website, you have a contact us for more information button. But you kind of want to list out all the different ways that a customer can find you and contact you and actually buy your product or buy your service. And then, so what happens? Well, what's your production cycle? So if you're building picnic tables and you get an order in for 5 picnic tables, what do you do next? Well, you got to go to the hardware store and buy your lumber and buy your nails, and then you have to build the thing. And how long is that going to take you? Then the fulfillment cycle, are you going to deliver your products? Do people come pick them up? And you might have different avenues, right? So especially right now during COVID, we're doing drop-off. A lot of companies are doing deliveries now where they weren't before, kind of map that flow out. Now the challenge is that a lot of folks will stop here and think, okay, I'm done. I've made the sale and I've completed the sale, I've gotten paid, the end. But there's an old adage, your best customer is an existing customer. And so the question is, how do you get that customer to come back? And how do you get that customer to come back and spend more money? And so if you just leave it at the sale and let it go, you're never going to get them. You never know if they're going to come back or not, unless you're actually following up with folks and then tracking them. So if you don't have this in place right now, if you're an existing business owner, I would encourage you to start thinking about this. So someone comes into your business, what is their, for lack of a better term, what's their call to action? Maybe you're collecting their email address and you can add them to your newsletter. Maybe you do a survey. People, they order something online. This happens all the time when I order stuff online now. You'll get an email maybe a week or so later saying, hey, do you want to review the product or give us your feedback? Is there anything we could do differently? Is there anything we could do better? Is there something else you need from us? There's continued contact with the client, the customer, not only asking for feedback, but then are they going to come back? Or maybe they have questions and you can sort of further that relationship even more. And then tracking. It's really important to track your clients and track your customers to see if that process, the sales cycle and the process that you're undertaking is actually leading to having your customers come back and, like I said, increase their purchases. So it's really, really important. And again, a lot of folks just stop at the point where they're like, okay, I've sold my picnic tables, the end. But again, take the time to take that extra step and plot out, how am I following up with my customers and how am I tracking them? And it's part of your operations. For product related businesses, you also want to kind of map out, who are your suppliers? Where are you getting them from? Where your supplies from? Whether they're the fully finished products or if they're components of your product that you wind up putting together, where are they located? Do you have to assemble these? If you are assembling things, if you are putting things together, how are you doing that? Is this something where you're sitting at your kitchen table and you've got product all around you and you're putting things together into boxes and packaging them and sending them out the door? Or are you, retail, for example? What do you have to do to assemble your products? What kind of quality control measures do you have in place? What about packaging? What about delivery? These are all things you're going to kind of want to think about. Do you have any warranties or guarantees that you are offering to your customers and clients? That's going to want to be in your business plan. What about billing? How are you actually getting paid for your services? And, one of the biggest things, I had a consulting business years ago, and one of the biggest surprises that I had was that just because I sent people an invoice that said, net 30 days, pay me within 30 days, it was amazing how many people actually didn't do that. And, I'm sitting there and you guys know, I got my rent to pay and I'm waiting for the check and it's in the mail and it's not 30 days, it's 60 days. So how are you what's your process for billing? And as I had a little consulting business. So the billing department was me emailing people saying, hey, you forgot to pay me. But again, the size and scope of your business, you may have a very different and more formal process in place. You may actually have someone in your accounting, you have an accounting department who that's their job. They call people up and make sure you get paid. So again, the scope of your business is going to determine the details of this, but you certainly want to think about, what's your billing process going to be and what's that going to look like. Then loss prevention. And again, this is specific to certain industries, but obviously if you have a retail establishment, you need to think about loss prevention, whether it's people coming in, you know, off the street and stealing things, or maybe even internally you have an employee theft issue. You're going to have to be on top of that. And what kind of loss prevention procedures and processes do you have to put in place? Do you need to have cameras installed? Do you need to have a security guard? You know, if maybe you have a jewelry store and you want to have a security guard there. So it just depends on, again, the type and scale of your business, but that's something you want to think about. If you have a service-related business, you need to think about what's your territory. Do you have people coming into your home, or are you going to your clients' homes to perform that service? Are you going out to the community? How does that impact you? How does that impact things like your insurance, your personal safety, things like that? Do you have any vendors that you rely on, or any partners that you may have? You know, I think about the wedding industry, for example. A lot of wedding photographers, for example, they often partner with wedding consultants, or, you know, a photographer and they may know the caterers may work together in tandem. So if there's anyone critical to the success of your business, in whether it's a formal partnership or an informal partnership, you kind of want to talk about that as well. How are you doing fulfillment? How are you actually delivering your services? And again, in a very practical way, how are you going to do things? Are you going to use your personal vehicle and charge mileage and drive from point A to point B? Maybe you've had, because of COVID, you've had to switch online to, you know, how do you do piano lessons or do music lessons online? I have one of my best friends is a music teacher for a private high school, and it's a real challenge to do chorus over Zoom. So what kind of things have you had to change along the way and making do with surviving through COVID times? Similarly to if you have a product or service product guarantee, do you have any service guarantees? So if someone's unhappy with the service you provide, what happens? What kind of, you know, will you redo it for free, or will you make changes, or, you know, will you, a million different ways to do it. And again, it really depends on your industry, but think about what kind of guarantees or warranties even you may want to provide with your service delivery. And then finally, again, billing. Like I said, when we were talking about this before, billing is really important for certain. I almost think it's because service providers are often sole proprietors, it's so critical that you map out a process for your billing. Even if it's something like, okay, every Friday, it's billing day, and I'm going to make sure I send out all my invoices, and I'm going to make those phone calls, because if you don't plan the time out, set the time aside, it just won't get done. So things to think about. The next thing you want to do, and this is really a two-part process. One is to make, particularly if you're an existing business, make a list of what you have already. So if you have any assets, if you have any, you know, your computers, software programs that you have, your website, maybe you have an e-commerce site, maybe you're selling stuff on Etsy right now and you want to, you know, whatever you're using that right now, you kind of make a list. And then you kind of want to think about, okay, well, what do I need? So for example, you may say, you know what, within next year, I know I'm going to have to continue doing my delivery service and I'm going to have to buy a vehicle. Okay, so that's an asset that you're going to need to acquire. Maybe you have, your laptop is on its last legs because you've been doing so much on Zoom and you've got so much going on, and you know you need to buy a new laptop next year just to get through. So what do you need to succeed, whether it's next year or in the next coming years? Maybe you know, okay, I have a basic website set up, but it's not, I don't have any e-commerce. I can't sell from my website. So I know that this coming year, I've got to take this little, you know, placeholder website and actually integrate an e-commerce platform so that I can sell online and actually have people go to my website and buy my products or secure my services. And then finally, what's your customer service look like? What's your customer service plan? And then secondarily, do you have a training process in place? Now, again, if you have employees, this is really critical because as a business owner, you may have a very clear, concrete notion of how you want your customers handled, how you want them to be treated. And you can't just assume that your employees know that. You're going to have to make sure that they're trained on that. And so maybe one of your 2021 goals is, okay, I know I've got 5 retail employees and I really need to buckle down and do some training and make sure that come May, June, the summer, when the tourism season hits again, that everyone's really well trained and knows what's going to be expected of them. And so that we can make sure that our customers feel really well taken care of. So start with what you've got right now and then kind of look at, okay, what do I need for next year? Now, if you're a startup business, some of this is going to be a little bit of guesswork and it's a little bit of kind of dreaming and kind of thinking about, okay, well, what do I want this to look like next year? You know, in the next year, what do I want my business to have? What kind of assets do I want to be? What are my needs in terms of hardware and software and all these things? What's challenging is that once you've got your list together, then you have to make some decisions because, you know, it's like a kid's wish list at Christmas. You know what you want, you know what you need, and then you've got your budget. That's kind of why we do the financials first, because you'll have an idea of how much money you have to work with, and then you know what you need, and then you kind of marry those two and go, okay, I can afford to spend a couple $1,000s on a new laptop, or I can't do it this year. I'm going to have to figure something else out. I'm going to have to make do with what I have until things improve. For those of you who are selling products, you will need to figure out how you're going to manage your inventory. One really critical component of this is storage. I cannot tell you how many small business owners I have worked with who have ordered inventory and then UPS shows up at their house one day with an entire truck full of stuff and they just didn't realize how much stuff it would be and they have nowhere to put it, right? Their garage is full, their basement's full, they don't have an attic. They're trying to clean out a spare room as UPS is piling the boxes on their driveway. You'd be surprised at how many leggings $5,000 buys at a wholesale price. So plan out, if you have to buy your products, where are you going to store them? Do the products that you're buying have any requirements? Now, certainly if you're a restaurant and you have to buy food, it has to be refrigerated. There are rules about that, but maybe what you're selling also has issues that you're going to have to address. If you're a candy store, you have to make sure, and you're selling chocolates, you got to make sure the chocolates aren't melting in your back room, right? You're also going to think about things like merchandising. How are you actually going to display these goods? What's your floor plan look like? Do you have any digital systems in place to track your inventory? What kind of policies are you going to put in place? And again, sometimes there are industry standards, like in restaurants, first in, first out. So, the first batch of carrots that you buy, you use those up first so that, they're good. You don't have carrots sitting around rotting in your walk-in cooler. But again, other industries may have different standards that you need to adhere to in terms of inventory management policies. You want to set up a schedule in terms of assessing your inventory. Do you do inventory once a year, once a quarter, once a week? Depends on the size and scope of your business, but you certainly want to make a schedule and stick to it. It's also important to look at what your competitors are doing. And this is really important, particularly with retail. Look at what your competitors are doing. How are they displaying their inventory? What inventory are they carrying? Are they carrying the same brands and same products that you are, or are they similar? What's the customer path and the floor plan layout for your business? I have to tell you, years ago when I was working with the main downtown center, we had a retail consultant come to the main and do some walkthroughs of downtowns, and he could go into a store and he'd be like, give the store owners like 2 or 3 very simple things they could do to change the flow or change the view of their products. And it was like instantaneous difference. Like all of a sudden you could walk through the middle of the store. You could actually see the products on display. And so, and there are classes and there's things you can learn about visual merchandising, but you do want to think about that. Make sure that people can see what you have on sale. If people have to rummage around and kind of look through, and if it's hard to find, they're not gonna buy it. And then finally, think about things like barcodes, and then there's UPCs and SKU codes that you can do. And this links back to your purchase sale, point of sale service, your cash register system and things like that. Some of the stuff you may be able to hook up directly into your QuickBooks, depending on what kind of systems you have. And this will help you manage your inventory electronically. It's going to help you in a myriad of ways, but it's something to think about. This can be costly, but a lot of times the initial investment into doing barcodes and encoding your products, you get back on the back end because you can manage your inventory much more smartly, for lack of a better word. Why is managing your inventory important? When you do this correctly, your inventory management system can really tell you a story about your business. It can tell you lots of different things, actually. It's going to be able to tell you what your best sellers are. And we know that's important because A, you can keep on top of your inventory, keep on top of your ordering, but maybe this is an opportunity to increase your prices on some things and you can make a little bit more money off the things that are selling really well. It's also going to help you track what your high sales events are, such as holidays. If you know the holiday season is really important to your business, maybe it's going to help you decide, oh, Thursdays are actually a really busy day for us, or maybe they're not busy at all. It's been interesting during COVID working with clients who've had to make some decisions about, having to cut their business hours. And when I talk with them, well, what days are your slowest days? If you need to close for a day, close on the days that you're slowest. And it's kind of like, well, I don't know. Usually Mondays are slow, but last Monday was really busy. And you don't want to use your gut on this. You want to have some real hard data to make some of these decisions, should you have to. So being able to know what's selling well, what your busy days are, what your busy times are, because that can also help you with staffing as well. Conversely, a good inventory management system is going to allow you to track what products have a low turnover, what's not selling. It's not uncommon for folks to have to make really hard decisions about cutting product lines. There can be products that you love, that you're just so excited to carry in your store, and nobody buys them. And it can be really disheartening sometimes, but if it's not selling, don't keep reordering it. Get rid of it, cut the line. You may find that you're having to order things more frequently, but your sales revenue is stayed the same, and you're kind of like, what's going on here? Well, maybe this is where you get into the loss prevention stuff. So if suddenly you're having to keep reordering things, but the sales are not matching what you're ordering, you've got a theft problem, and then you've got to get to the bottom of that. But it's going to help you. It's going to clue you into that much more quickly if you've got a system in place. It's also going to help you in terms of noting any seasonal trends or any societal trends that are out there right now. COVID has completely switched how we're buying things these days, and you want to be able to track that. And again, not just from a gut level, but from a real, here's the data, this is what the data is telling me, I've got to make some decisions about this. So I'm going to pause right here, go back to video and see if we have any questions on the whoops, sorry. I always do this. Do we have any questions on the operations? I'm trying to get back to the chat. I don't think I have. Oh, here we go, chat. Okay, we've got a restaurant owner. Hi, Kim. Let's see. We've got a music Peter, small boat tour business in Freeport. Think of revising my business plan after, 2020 was really challenging. And yes, it is absolutely a great time to be working on your plan, especially, yeah, it's very difficult to get comparable results doing music in person. Absolutely. It really is. It's a big challenge. So any questions on operations? Anything we've talked about so far that you have questions about, or any burning questions about operations planning? Okay. As you can see, as I've been talking, it really depends vastly on the type of business you have and how complicated these sections will be for you. Okay, another quiet group. All right, so I'm gonna go back here and seeing no questions, I'm gonna see if I can get back here. Oh, Lordy, Lordy, Lordy. Yeah, there I am. Okay, I'm gonna turn my video off. Close that out, and we're gonna move on to, maybe we're gonna move on to management. There we go. Okay. So another section of your business plan is management. And again, gonna depend vastly on who you are, what kind of business you have, and whether you have employees or if it's just you or not. But you definitely want to have on hand bios, your resume that you can include with your business plan. And well, you don't have to include a headshot in your business plan. You may want to have updated headshots made for your website or any other sort of visual media that you do, any sort of, or for that matter, any photos that you may need to do your marketing with. So making sure that you've got that all available. With your business plan, you do want to have a bio, and you do want to include your resume as an attachment to your business plan. And that's true for you as the owner, as well as if you have any key leadership positions. So maybe you have a manager for your business, or you have a larger business and you've got a finance director, or you have an operations director, a sales director, a marketing director, any kind of those leadership positions. You're also going to want to include bios of them and their resumes. And again, for your website, you want to think about having headshots available for them as well. What's your staffing plan? And for those of you who are in startup mode, you might not have hired positions yet, but maybe okay, I'm starting this business and I'm going to have to hire 4 part-time people, or maybe I'm going to have 2 full-time people and 6 part-time people. What does that look like? And what roles are they going to fill? What are the job requirements, and do you have job descriptions written in place? If you have them, that's great, and I would definitely include those in your business plan. What's your process for hiring employees? What's your process for onboarding them? What's your management plan for managing employees? And we're going to talk about this a little bit more. And then, employee issues. So what happens if you hire somebody and it doesn't work out? And what's your process? And do you understand what your legal, both your legal responsibilities are? There are things that you don't want to ask as you're interviewing people that, it's simply illegal to do. And you want to make sure that you're meeting all of the legal requirements that you have in terms of discrimination and not violating any workers' disabilities or anything like that. So you want to make sure if you're hiring employees, you know what you're doing, and you know that you have crossed all your T's and dotted all your I's. If you are going to hire people, again, whether you're a startup or if you're an existing business owner and you're in growth mode and okay, and over the coming year or two, I'm going to have to add new employees. How do you actually do this? And you're going to have to identify, what the responsibilities are, what needs to get done in your business on a daily basis, what can you delegate, and then kind of think about, okay, what's my hiring plan going to look like for, again, whether it's this year, the next coming 2 to 3 years as you grow. What's essential? And we've kind of had a crash course on essential this year. And I think a lot of us have been our eyes have been opened as to what essential in our business actually is. Can you fill those needs, any employment needs you have, with temporary or contractor employees? And I do want to give you the caveat that there are legal distinctions as to what constitute a contractor. And so I would encourage you, the IRS has guidelines about that. If you have an accountant or an attorney, you can talk to them as well. But sometimes hiring a contractor or a part-time employee or getting a temporary employee can help you with some short-term staffing needs. And that way you don't necessarily have to bear the burden of bringing on a full-time employee and all the additional costs that can incur. If you do hire employees, what kind of benefits are you going to offer? How are you going to pay them? Do you need to hire a payroll processing company? And one of the good things about payroll processing is the costs have come down significantly as it's become much more automated. And also it can help you make sure that your taxes get paid, your state and local state taxes, your employment taxes get paid. And that can be a huge, huge benefit for business owners, because a lot of times just worrying about having the money in the bank is enough. And if the payroll company is going to take care of all the other stuff, you just have to worry about having money in the bank. And then if you do hire contractors, how are you going to track that? How are you going to manage those contractors, and how are you going to track their time and make sure that you hired somebody for 20 hours a week and you don't suddenly discover you get a bill for 60 hours a week kind of thing. And you want to make sure that you're staying on top of that. So, and again, getting back to your business plan, you want to include this and some of this is going to be pretty granular, and you might not, especially if you're a startup, you might not have the detail, but you at least want to demonstrate that you're thinking about this and that you've got a plan in place that, okay, over the next couple of years, this is where I'm headed. I'm going to have that vision and figure out how, and this is how I'm going to get to that place and achieve that vision. Couple just hiring do's and don'ts. You do want to have job descriptions. A lot of times I see small business owners just hire people and, without a job description in place, and then someone doesn't work out, and it's really hard to work with that employee if you don't have that initial, like, okay, these are your duties. This is what you're supposed to be doing. And it can be a really helpful tool to help you manage staff. And then if things aren't going well, you have something to fall back on. You also want to think about advertising positions. Where are you going to do that? Is that going to cost? No, we don't look at the classifieds anymore. When I first graduated from college, I remember coming back home to Maine and going through the Press Herald and circling the want ads that I wanted to apply for. And I, type out my resumes and send them in. And we don't do that anymore. It's all online. And if you're going to post on LinkedIn, or you're going to do it on Indeed, are there different ways to do it depending on your needs, but it's 90% of job hunting now, if not more, is done online. And so you want to think about how you're going to advertise for these positions. Are you going to have any pre-screening questions in place? And again, know what you can legally ask and what you can't ask. What's your interview process going to look like? And typically, if you're a sole proprietor, if you're hiring your first employee, you're going to be doing all this yourself. What's the process? Are you going to have employee just meet with you? Maybe you have, like I said, if you have a larger company, maybe you have a team and you want the team to also interview a prospective new employee. Do you have to have them fill out an application, or are they legal? Once you hire somebody, there are forms you have to fill out. Who's going to be in charge of that? Who's going to be in charge of orienting the employee? Again, chances are it's going to be you if you're a small business owner, but there may be parts of the orientation that you can delegate out. Do you have an employee manual? Maybe if you're a growing business, maybe one of your goals for 2021 is to actually put in place an employee manual. And that's something, your SBDC advisor, we can help you with. We can get you some resources. But again, both for legally and just employer relations and good practice, as you start to grow your staff, you're going to want to have an employee manual that really spells out what your expectations are, and what holidays and what are the benefits you're providing with people, and what are the expectations, and what are your schedule, and all that stuff. How are you going to evaluate your employees? Are you going to do this once a year? Do you bring somebody on? Do they have a trial period? All that stuff you got to think about, because it happens. The first person I ever hired, I was working for a university, and she told me when she interviewed that she had a massage business, which was fine as long as it didn't interfere with, it was a part-time side job. But I kept catching her. It turned out that she'd given out her office number. And so she had clients, her massage clients, calling our office to schedule appointments. No, you can't do that, right? And so I had to go through. Now, luckily, it was a university. They have very, very clear, concise process, stuff like that. But if you're a small business owner and someone's doing something wrong, you need to have a process in place and think about the stuff before something happens. People will never cease to surprise me. And then benefits and payroll, we kind of talked about that already, but what's your process and kind of how are you going to be onboarding people? And again, if you have a larger company, this is something you're going to be doing quite often. And remember, a small business is anything from 1 employee to 500 employees. So some of you out there may have larger businesses and a larger employee basis that you have to manage. So all of these things are things you want to think about, and to the best that you can, put them into your plan. And again, they might be put in as attachments. Maybe you have an employee manual and you're going to put that in to your plan as an attachment or a part of an appendices at the end. If you are going to use a payroll service, you may tell the bank, hey, we're going to be using this payroll service, or this is our process. Here are the jobs. We haven't hired these folks yet, but here are the job descriptions that we're going to work on filling once we have our financing in place, kind of thing. And you put those job descriptions as an attachment to your plan. Another thing that you are going to want to include in your plan, if it's applicable, or any sort of health and safety requirements that your industry may have. And so there may be OSHA regulations, like if you're doing anything construction related in particular, there may be some, laws that you have to comply with. And sometimes this is just as simple as saying, we're committed to complying with all OSHA regulations related to our industry. Sometimes it's just one sentence. Other times, depending on the industry, you may need to go into more detail. And the bank may, if you're going for financing, the bank may want to know more about how you're going to be complying with that. Maybe you have a safety manager, you have a foreman who's trained in certain things. Like daycares, for example, it's great when you have employees that are CPR certified, or you want to make sure, maybe you have to do background checks and you want to state very clearly in your business plan, all staff will have Corey background checks and be fingerprinted if need be. Anything that relates to the health and safety of your employees and your customers, you want to at least mention it in your business plan. Restaurant owners, serve safe is really important for restaurant employees. Make sure that people, you want to demonstrate that you've thought about this. You may have other governing agencies or licenses and permits that you need to apply for. Make sure that you've talked about that as well. And then right now, if you are going for financing, you definitely want to put somewhere in your business plan how you are addressing COVID. And not only from a, COVID's impacted our business and this is how, and we've, expanded our delivery kind of thing, but how are you complying with the state of Maine's checklist for COVID? How are you making sure that your staff have PPE and that they understand the mask regulations and that you have a process in place for training your customer, or, what happens if somebody comes in without a mask and things like that. The bank wants to know that you have addressed the COVID issue, and that's obviously going to continue for another year or so. So if you're thinking about financing between now and a year from now, you're going to want to address COVID head on in one section of your business plan or another. And I put it in, operations and management because I think it really is an operations piece, but depending on your business, you may put it somewhere else in your plan. I don't think it really necessarily matters where you address COVID in your plan, but you do need to address COVID if you're going for financing. Okay. Any questions? I'm going to go back here. See if I can find our chat window. I don't know why I keep losing the chat window here. Okay, let's see chat. Any questions on management? Not seeing any questions on management. Okay, I'm going to keep going, but again, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I'm going to try to get back to my screen here. Okay. Close that. Right. Now, I think when I started, I told you there were a few other things that I wanted to throw in here that I felt were relevant and kind of to close out this series that we hadn't addressed, but I think it's really important. And despite the fact that I took myself off video, my screen is hung up. So give me one more second here. Do staffing agencies work with businesses of 3 employees? Yeah, I don't know why they wouldn't. And I'm not sure what you mean by staffing agencies. If you mean like temp agencies, I think they do. I think sometimes with temp agencies, it's a cost thing. Temp agencies can be expensive in some ways, like they may charge you $25 an hour for an employee, but the employee only sees half of that. But sometimes it's cheaper doing that because then you're not paying, the employee is an employee of the temp agency or the staffing agency and not you. So you don't have to worry about paying taxes or anything like that. So it can even out. It's also a good way to try people out. A lot of folks, they're temp to perm positions. And so if you hire a temporary person and they don't work out, it's easy to go find somebody else. You're not, they're not your employee, so that you can just go to the staffing agency and say, hey, this person's not working out. Temp agencies, bookkeeper who handles, yeah. Yeah, there are a lot of bookkeepers out there who really specialize working with small businesses and, on a part-time basis, they may have 10 or 12 clients that they work with, or even more, depending on what you're asking them to do. But yeah, it can be expensive. Payroll, if you have a bookkeeper who's doing payroll, it may be worthwhile looking into a payroll service that might be less expensive than actually having your bookkeeper do it. It just depends on what your system in place is. So, all right, I'm still frozen here. Why am I frozen? There we go. All right. Woo. Miscellaneous. One thing that I would encourage you to do is go out and buy a big wall calendar, a big paper wall calendar, and plan your year. Mark out any holidays, any closings that you need to be aware of. Maybe as a sole proprietor, you're going to take a week off in August, plot that out. Any other sort of critical dates, put that on your calendar and, make sure this calendar is visible and something that you can revisit, monthly or weekly. Any other important dates that you want to make sure you don't miss, whether it's your quarterly tax filings, if you have an LLC and you have to do an annual report to the state, put that on your calendar. These are things that you don't want to forget for next year. If there are any licenses or permits or certifications that you may need to do over the course of the next year, are going to come up, make sure you've got that, or continuing education requirements. So I have a lot of clients who are therapists and they have to have continuing ed credits every year. You know, mark it in your calendar, got to do this. Another thing you can do, I would encourage you to do if you're an existing business, you have a website, go in and make sure that your about section of your business is up to date, that you have an up-to-date bio, you have an up-to-date picture, headshot of you and your key employees. If you've had any major staffing changes over this year, which probably some of you have, those of you with employees, people have changed jobs left and right because of COVID and implications. Make sure your staffing chart is up to date. Make sure that if it says call Kim, our sales director make sure Kim is still your sales director. You know, make sure your clients are calling the right people and have the right names and the right contact information for them. If you have an organizational chart, you want to update that as well. Make sure that's current. And you can, if you're planning to hire folks, you know, put little empty boxes in for your organizational chart to show that, okay, we're going to be filling these positions. If you have employees, there may be legal notices that you need to post. You know, the employee, like labor law posters that you see in a lot of break rooms, you know, you may need to make sure that you've got new labor law posters up in your break rooms or wherever you put them. And then finally, it might be good if you have any legal or accounting needs, as we've gone through the series that have come up, you have questions for your attorney or accountant, reach out now, especially before tax time, you know, before April, see if you can set up some times to meet with folks and just have those conversations while things are kind of slow. You know, the holidays are typically slow. So for some of you anyway, some of you holidays are crazy, but when you know you have some downtime, make appointments and go in and have your conversations with the professionals, and so you can get the guidance you need to update your plan and update your plan for 2021 and make 2021 a successful year. And it's frozen again. As always, if you have any questions that are specific to your industry or your situation, please feel free to reach out to your SBDC advisor. If you don't have an SBDC advisor, you can jump online, go to our website, and as soon as the next slide comes up, you'll be able to see how to reach us. But our website is mainsbdc.org, and you can request advising there. That is all I have. We went through that really quickly today. Do we have any other questions that either pertaining to today's presentation or anything through the series? Is there anything you wanted to ask that you didn't have the opportunity, that didn't come up, that I didn't address? Feel free to address it in the chat. There we go. It finally came up. So there's our website. You can contact us to get set up, match with an advisor. Any other questions? Kelsey, do you have any closing words or closing thoughts?
I thought that was great. I hope everyone else found it helpful. I will be sending out a follow-up email once all of this is processed with the recording to today. I'll also link back to those first two sessions in case you missed either of those. Yeah, everyone in the chat's just saying good job, Lori.
Okay.
So.
You guys make me nervous. This is the third one I've done and I haven't had a ton of questions. So, and that's fine. If you do have questions, if things come up over the course of the next few days, I'm sure this is on top of mind with Thanksgiving being in 2 days, but you know, as time goes by, if you have questions, feel free to reach out either to myself or another SBDC advisor. We are here to help. And, you know, if you didn't see it yesterday in the Press Herald, there was an article about how many new startups are happening right now, and even here in Maine. And I know that we here have seen so many folks coming in to either start new businesses or to buy existing businesses. So there are opportunities out there. It's been pretty amazing actually to see. And so if you think you're crazy for starting a business right now, you're not. Or you're in good company, depending on how you look at it. And if you're trying to grow your business, we can help you with that as well. And yeah, so thank you again for joining us. I hope you all have a wonderful holiday. If you're celebrating, be safe. Keep Dr. Shaw happy, and check our website for our other upcoming presentations on a whole host of your business needs. All right, have a great day, everybody.